Hi disasters, my name is Ray, I'm a writer, and this is Bookshelf Far Far Away, where I talk about books. Today's book is going to be, where is it? I lost the book. Today's book is The Grip of It by Jac Jemc. I actually don't know how to pronounce this name. It is a 2017 horror/thriller book, and it has a whole 276 pages. It wasn't a very long read. It just took me a minute because I've been in a reading slump, which is like the worst possible time to start a booktube. Booktubing? Being a booktuber? I don't know. But back to the book. Honestly, one of like my favorite thrillers I think I have ever read. And I surprisingly read a lot of thrillers for someone super interested in like sci-fi fantasy stuff. I mean, behind you guys is literally a bookshelf full of Star Wars books. The synopsis from its Goodreads page reads as this. Julie and James settle into a house in a small town outside the city where they met. The move, prompted by James' penchant for gambling and his inability to keep his impulses in check, is quick and seamless. Both Julie and James are happy to leave behind their usual haunts and start afresh. But this house, which sits between ocean and forest, has plans for the unsuspecting couple. As Julie and James try to settle into their home and their relationship, the house and its surrounding terrain become the locus of increasingly strange happenings. The architecture, claustrophobic, riddled with hidden rooms within rooms, becomes unrecognizable, decaying before their very eyes. Stains are animated on the wall, contracting, expanding, and map themselves onto Julie's body in the form of bruises. Mold spores taint the water that James pours from the sink. Together, the couple embark on a panicked search for the source of their mutual torment, a journey that mires them in the history of their peculiar neighbors and the mysterious residents who lived in the house before Juliet and James. I read that from my iPad, so that's why my eyes weren't kind of on you guys. Sorry about that. But that was super creepy. So this book was the perfect read for October. It was spooky, it was captivating. It got to the point where I couldn't read it at home if I was home alone or if it was nighttime. I am the biggest baby, no matter how like many scary movies or like scary videos I watch on YouTube. I can't do it. I think its title suits not only the story and the contents, but it also just, it encompasses the pull of this book. It just kind of like takes you and like, you have to read me, you have to finish me, you have to buy me and put me on your shelf. I'm very tempted to buy this book just so I can read it again next October or when I'm wanting something spooky, because this was fantastic. Like, no joke. Straight up, read it, please. I'll say it again before the end of the video, promise. So, this book follows, like the synopsis said, Julie and James. We don't ever learn their last name, but they're a couple running kind of from, like, screaming from the city after James's whole addiction with gambling, and they're trying to kind of just move past it in their relationship because there's a lot of like trust lost there and a lot of finances lost there. But they're happy to move from an apartment into like this large house that was super cheap. It's by the, like, I think it's by the ocean is what the synopsis says. It's by the ocean. It's got a beautiful forest, but it's weird because it's such a low price, and you know, only weird houses that are this nice are weird. The haunting starts off mildly. First, it's kind of just a low humming, groaning sound that echoes through the house, kind of like a droning heartbeat is what I put in my script. Very pretentious, Ray. Thank you. It could be electrical, but it always seems to be something a bit more sinister. Then the bruising starts, which Julie is constantly under attack by something she never sees, nor does she ever feel it. It's just, she's always finding new bruises, and they seem to be increasing in size and stuff. Their friend Connie, who kind of helped her land this job in the small town, worries that it's James that's doing this to her. Of course, he's not. It's the house. But how do you really explain that? So Julie only brushes it off as, no, it's not James. And then they also discover they've got a bit of a nosy neighbor. He kind of just watches them from his own house, and any attempt to be friendly with him is just like, yeah, no, bye, thanks for the food, but you guys can't come in. Not that they would really want to, because his house is like super gross and dusty and has a bunch of cat pee and fur. So yeah, no. Not a whole lot lost there. Eventually they have, I can't remember if it was Julie or James's family over for the night. I want to say it was Julie's dad and stepmom. They come over, spend a night, and then something wakes them all up in the middle of the night. Kind of just screaming into their face. Not something anyone can see, but it's every single person wakes up to something screaming in their face. The next morning, the parents are kind of just like, yeah, no, we're leaving. Deuces. Get out of this spooky house. It's bad. They kind of just ignore it at first. It's just, you know, it's impossible to sell if they wanted to, so it just gets chalked down to new home jitters. After the family leaves, sometime later, their neighbor goes missing. Just up and disappears after a little encounter with Julie. So, the police come by with frequency because they're the ones that reported him missing after all. But nothing ever comes of it. The only thing that does is a single disembodied finger. Julie and James, they recognize that their house is kind of messed up and it's probably haunted. Hint, it is. But they also know it'd kind of be impossible to sell because, you know, it sat on the market for just so long. They just need to, you know, stick it out a little bit longer. And then they do stick it out until mold starts pouring from the tap water until Julie ends up in the hospital. It begs the question, is it really worth sticking out anymore? The contents of this book left me with such a case of like unease and jitters in my own house. And I mean, this house isn't great. It's got a lot of like spooky kind of vibes already going for it. I hate being home alone. And this book did not help me whatsoever. All of my lights had to be on anytime I sat down to read it. And it's, you know, not horror of the traditional sense. It's not like, you know, like some horror books just like, boom, jump scare. Like, I don't know, how do you do jump scares in a book? I'm more of a thriller person. I need to read more like horror, and I have to pronounce horror. But it still thrilled me, and it kind of made, like, when I would read it sometimes, it felt like I was dropping on a roller coaster, which I really liked, because I love roller coasters. And the writing style actually drew me in too. It's kind of considered a cheat in the writing community, finally using my master's degree for something, by the way, called the stream of consciousness writing style. Its underuse kind of makes it a bit of a novelty in and of itself, which is, you know, great for it's great for horror novels. Horror novels do not get enough credit when they use stream of consciousness, and Jac Jemc uses it in the best way. The best. I very rarely read stream of consciousness that I liked, and this is one of them. There are descriptions within it that kind of like take your breath away if you're not super comfortable. Okay, I wrote that in my script. It's kind of dumb, but we're gonna go with it. I love this writing style. It kind of gives you more of an in-depth of the character's thought process and kind of how they are, their personality, and we're trying to connect with them, so that's kind of what we want. In what, you know, better way than the gentle ramblings of the character we're reading. So, I will say, so my next kind of thing going down my laundry list of what I wanted to talk about with this book was my favorite quote. It's page 268, which is way at the back here. So, I can't read the entire quote because it is so far towards the end of the book that I need to, like, be careful. And it's, when I see an errant shadow, I tell myself it's nothing. When I notice a row of photos turned face down on the shelf, I write them. I don't know why this quote in particular was one I really, really liked. There are so many of these, like, end of chapter, like, paragraphs that I loved, and I don't know why, but this one kind of stuck with me when as I finished the book and as I was writing my script. I just could not leave without this quote. Of course, it's close to the end, like I said, so I couldn't read the entire quote. But I gave you the important part. That's what matters. The only issue I did have with this book, which surprisingly, yes, I had an issue with the book, was the rambling sometimes would confuse me and draw me out of the story. That's the, like, major downfall of stream of consciousness writing. It may have been purposeful, adding kind of to the element of discomfort and uncertainty you're meant to feel as you read it, but it also just felt really off, and it was off-putting. But I feel like this psychological thriller needs to be, I mean, psychological paranormal, a bit of both. It's very unsettling. I didn't even touch on, like, surprisingly, this tiny book held a lot, and I didn't even touch on, like, half of it. Most of my book reviews will be more in-depth. This one was just hard to review, but I had to put one out there because I really want more people to read this book. I think it belongs on everybody's bookshelves, end of discussion. It combines itself with the haunted house genre very, like, kind of seamlessly, and I can only really describe it as haunting and gripping. You see, yeah. See what I did there? The grip of it, gripping. Are you ready for spooky season? Because I sure as shit am. Happy reading, my dear disasters. It's been Ray. It's been real. Bye, guys. It may have been why can't I say this word?